Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Morning Update Show. I'm your co host, Trey Holiday. And as you guys can tell, especially for those of you that have been supporting us for a long time, you guys see that I am in O's chair today, alone by myself in studio, believe it or not. But that doesn't mean Big O is not working hard from afar. You guys know we do this as a duo. Let's bring in Big O.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, Trey Holiday. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. How are you, my friend?
I'm looking good. Man, you're looking great underneath them lights. Goodness. Shining.
Your spot always keeps it nice and hot over here. The great light.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. First of all, it's good to see you. Before we get into all the news, man, I hope you had a good weekend.
I did. I hope you had the same. I know it's great for you to be with your family right now. I know you're going to be getting into that, but I'm glad that you're able to join us.
Yeah, no doubt. And actually, for a lot of our viewers, or longtime viewers, you know that my stepmom, my bonus mom, Paulette, she's battling stage 2 breast cancer, and she actually has her surgery here in 2 days. And it's the power of presence. So I'll be out of the studio for a while. I'll be down here in North Carolina, still checking in, doing what we do. And before we do get into the news today, and there's a lot of it, and quite a few things going on, is that had to show my old man. Today's is actually his birthday. So a lot of people follow my dad in the comments on the birthdays and everything. Had to show the old man how to use the Zoom machine.
Thank you so much. This is such a blessing. Wow. Tuesday?
Okay, that's better and better.
Yeah, maybe let us stay normal here.
Wow, I'm just trying to see everybody who's there. Which, is that Tuesday?
Yeah, I'm right here. I'm trying to get my camera to work, Daddy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he figured out the Zoom machine and had a nice big Zoom party for his 76th birthday.
Oh, you there right in time, my friend. That is beautiful. And it's great to see your dad. He was looking so elated to see his loved ones on the Zoom. Great work, oh.
Yeah, and I also want to point this out is that speaking of breast cancer, in October we had we launched our special breast cancer awareness T-shirts. I think we'll be rocking those at some point this week. We still have a few of those left, and the proceeds, at least a good part of those proceeds, go to Sierra Sisters, which is an organization that's there in Seattle, Washington, and helps women of color who are struggling with breast cancer. So.
Absolutely. I'll be having mine on Wednesday, sending Mama Paulette nice love as she goes into surgery. So I will definitely be ready.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, the big news around the Pacific Northwest and with national and international was down there in Tacoma. We do have a video here, but we got a different angle brought to us from Impactful Lens. The main angle everybody saw is pretty traumatic. Actually shows people being ran over. We didn't want to. Our audience has already seen a lot of stuff, especially through protests and everything else. But here's a video from Impactful Lens, and then we'll talk about what's going on down in Tacoma. Yeah. I know you hit me up as soon as you saw that video. You sent me a message. Like, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it was quite shocking, to be honest, though. I mean, with the climate that we're in right now, with so many people taking to the streets with regard to police brutality, police violence, right there, I mean, we see, okay, there was maybe some street racing going on, but it's unfortunate that there was no way for him to get through and then run someone over. I mean, it just is bad optics on the Tacoma Police Department, period, point blank. And it is another something that people are, literally the next day, on yesterday on Sunday, people gathering at the park again to uplift the messaging of now defunding Tacoma Police Department because of this. So, it just really bad optics, man, for the Tacoma Police. And I'm really hoping that person there, that we saw got ran over. I know there was a hospitalization, but I'm really hoping that that family, is able to, that person that got hit and their family is that they're able to walk away, honestly. But this is just really, really bad timing and bad optics.
Yeah, I mean, I guess even more than bad optics is the fact that like somebody got ran over. It doesn't appear that the injuries are life threatening, thankfully. And it looks like there's a lot of video on this, and a lot of video is going to come out. But I mean, some things I think are, indisputable. That the officer sped forward and hit actually a few people and ran over somebody there, which also this incident here sparked protests out in Tacoma last night, which was interesting, I'd say, to watch that. But let's talk a little bit about most people have seen this video and heard about it, but let's talk about, first of all, the statement from the mayor, initially Mayor Victoria Woodard's. For those who woke up this morning, this came out yesterday, for those who woke up this morning feeling outraged or frustrated, angry, shocked, hurt, scared, I understand, because I feel the very same way about what we witnessed last night. So that's the mayor kind of coming out early and being selective in the words that she used, but she still made a statement. A lot of cities have ordinances where when there's a use of deadly force, and I mean a car is deadly, it can be a deadly force, although nobody died, that people don't really talk about it. Elected officials don't talk about it, but the mayor came out and made a statement there. Clearly this is something that's not going to go away. And it's also kind of reopening the spotlight on the issue around Manuel Ellis. And, Tacoma Police Department, up here in Seattle at least, Manuel Ellis comes up on the radar and goes down, up on the radar and goes down. But people here in Seattle are now talking about Manuel Ellis again and, how that investigation was handled. And when we talk about investigations, just want to bring this up here real quick, because it's going to be handled by what's called the FIT, which is the Force Investigation Team that's down there. And got a few quotes here. So this is part of what the Tacoma Police Department up top, what they said in their statement. The officer, fearing for his safety, tried to back up, was unable to do so because of the crowd. And now when we talk about FIT, this is the team that comes together from Pierce County, made up of different law enforcement agencies that are supposed to investigate this. Puyallup Police Captain Dan Pashon, one of the team's investigators, said there's no policy for how an officer should respond if a crowd surrounds a patrol car. You really can't come up with a clear situation on how to handle something along those lines. It's interesting because, we've talked about, especially in ththese conversations with OPA, policy and what policy is or lack of policy.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why people, when you see the videos coming out like that in the drove, so many people had their cell phones out. When I talk about bad optics, it's like, how come that officer wasn't thinking of another way? Okay, slowly moving your vehicle. At one point, it shows he was trying to back up, couldn't really do that. But even moving slowly and blaring the alarm, blaring the signals of the car, maybe could have resulted in something different. Shout out to Mayor Woodard. This is why so many that I know in Tacoma rock with that mayor, because honestly, it is important to address these things and to showcase your side of humanity. Even though you're an elected official, when you see something like that, it's just hard to witness. I mean, no matter what, that police, again, the concept of police fearing for their lives. I don't want to put that in just like some kind of air quotes, but it's that we've heard that statement time and time again. We've saw that as the basis for, people saying, hey, they did this because they feared their life. They reached for their gun. They shot because they fear for their life. The fear for your life strategy hasn't really resounded well in community. And so I appreciate that the mayor did make that statement. And hopefully this is something, we like to keep our finger on the pulse of these things to see how this really plays out.
Yeah, well, I mean, and definitely there's going to be, lots of investigation around this. And a few things, what brings to mind is that in Eric calligraphy, me and Erica have to look for the footage. There was a time where some protesters were arrested and a group went down there in Seattle. They went out to the King County Jail, and then there was a cruiser that came through and asked them, because they were in the streets, to leave. And then they surrounded the cruiser, and the officer just started talking to them. And the officer just got on the megaphone and started talking to him. They surrounded the cruiser, and he was like, "Hey, man, I understand it's this and that, blah blah blah." He talked to him for like 20 minutes and de-escalated the whole situation. I mean, we were waiting for like backup. It's gonna be backup. It's gonna be this, just on the expectation of things. But we'll see if we can find that footage from that day where in Seattle the officer got on the megaphone and just started talking to people. And then ultimately people just, de-escalated it. But the other thing that's interesting and what's unique about Seattle is that, in Pierce County, it's the FIT, this force investigation team and a lot of stuff that came out of I-940. Seattle's exempt of that because of the consent decree. But we're the only city that has something like an OPA, a civilian oversight, whether people are rocking with OPA or not rocking with OPA. In Pierce County, it's basically law enforcement investigating law enforcement. And here in Seattle, you have the OPA as well as the OIG. So we'll see how this investigation plays out down there in Tacoma.
Absolutely. And again, what you just described is what, folks were hoping for, some other kind of tactic. And I think as what I was saying earlier, the fact of the response to that large voice of people power and all of these folks bringing their voices together as a collective to say, there are major concerns. Manuel Ellis's death is alive and well, probably on the daily for so many organizers down there in Tacoma, because again, there needs to be new measures here, with regard to how the police are dealing with the community. And what we saw last night was not a great indication that they're understanding that.
All right, well, moving on here and actually keeping with the issue of policing, Chief Diaz came out, and Seattle police chief announces tougher policy of prosecuting protesters who vandalize. And you can read more about this run right here in the Seattle Times. Interesting thing about it, so Chief Diaz, he held they called a press conference together quickly on Saturday, and down there at the West Precinct inside the walls. And basically what Chief Diaz said was that they've kind of been leaning back on people as far as property damage or people that antagonize the police and then cause a reaction or whatever. And what's interesting about this story is there at the press conference, he said that the city attorney, Pete Holmes, was on board to start prosecuting people, especially on these property damage. He made it clear that it's not illegal to protest in the streets. It's not illegal to exercise your First Amendment rights. What they were saying is that specifically on people that vandalize or destroy property. And he said there at the press conference, he was like, Pete Holmes is on board, the city attorney and the mayor's on board. But then Pete Holmes' office kind of put out a statement that was kind of like, well, we're not going to prosecute people who are exercising their First Amendment rights. Right now, what's happening anyway is that most people aren't being booked into the jail unless it's a very serious offense, like an assault or something like that. The city attorney is saying they have up to 2 years to press charges. They can't book nobody into jail because of COVID. But Chief Diaz came out, strong, trying to make a strong statement, saying that they were gonna basically amp up their tactics and look to the city attorney to prosecute. And we'll see if that's, what the city attorney ends up doing.
Absolutely. I think it's also really important to note when we talk about vandalizing property, I literally think about Black Coffee Northwest. And I wonder, that's not in the same vein as protesting, but we're seeing a direct correlation between racist attacks on that Black-owned business. And do these measures also account for those kind of incidents? And that's something that I wonder about here. I also wonder when it comes to Chief Diaz coming out with this statement, if the timing is right. I think that's another reason why probably the prosecutor was like, well, hey, we're not really going to, be prosecuting people that are utilizing their First Amendment right. I think it's still a really touchy subject, though.
Right. Well, I mean, the protests as a whole have been a touchy subject here for a while, so to speak, has been the subject. And one of the things that came out was, and I'm paraphrasing here, I think you can find everything there in the Seattle Times article, and they also have the video, but it was almost like, well, there's been an election, there's a new president, people are still out there, you know what I'm saying? And kind of like the people that are out there just want to destroy stuff. And like I said, I'm just kind of paraphrasing. Don't hold me to that. And I don't know. I mean, there is a wind that's out there that's kind of blowing to be like, well, the police didn't arrest anybody before, or they didn't prosecute. So I take that back. The police have arrested over 600 people. It's a matter of charges being pressed and people appearing in court. And so there hasn't really been much prosecution. And what Chief Diaz is saying is that a lot of people, one, aren't Seattle residents. They're coming from out of town. And I'm assuming what he's saying out of town is not like Renton or Kent, but from a further distance out of town, and that many people are repeat offenders. So these are people they're arresting, they're going into jail, or they're getting charges brought or not, but basically they're back out on the streets and they're back out there. And this is an issue here. I don't see it going away anytime soon. But like you said, timing is interesting because it was like, okay, is this now because there's an election has happened, there's a new president? Is this now because, people are feeling differently? Is this now because pressure from property owners? Is now because SPD is just like they don't, they're fed up? Is it,
Right. I think you're absolutely right. And this is where, the community and the streets kind of get to talking, because ultimately, people really want to see that their voices are being heard. Things need to be actualized. And when you put statements out like this, it's like, well, are you hearing the streets? Are you hearing all of these people that are out there? So again, this is going to be interesting to follow up on, and see how people really respond to this.
Yeah. Well, there's always been a voice, no matter what, in protests that are like, protest, but don't destroy property, it's people always have a different view, or especially if it's somebody else's property, and so we'll follow it up though. It'd be interesting to speak to the city attorney, to Pete Holmes, and get his position directly as to prosecutions, things like that. Still, before we go to break, another police thing here, man. We've really committed, by the way, Converge Media, I have to say this about ourselves. We've committed a lot of time and energy here in trying to bring the different aspects around what's going on in Seattle in regards to policing and community and these protests and policies. We've spoken with OPA Director Meyerberg several times. We just had the one-on-one with Office of Inspector General Lisa Judge, and now the CPC, the Community Police Commission. This is tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. It's going to be streamed right here live, anywhere where you're watching the Morning Update show. It's a town hall on SPD policy changes. This is a community-led conversation about changes SPD is proposing regarding how officers are allowed to police protests and use force. So again, now this is the community. So we've talked to the OPA, Police Accountability, the Inspector General, and now this is the CPC. So we're following through and talking to everybody. This is tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. It should be real interesting.
Absolutely. Interesting indeed. Again, especially after what we just talked about earlier here on the show, what we saw happen in Tacoma, Chief Diaz coming out with this statement, even though Tacoma and SPD are separate, in terms of how the people experience police, a lot of the time it's one and the same. It's just police, right? And so it's like the way that we talked about it before is, unfortunately, there's this kind of, police versus, community members mentality, and how can we really bring it into some more unity, even as President Joe Biden kind of spoke about in his message, to the people is, well, how do we create unity? I know he's talking about across the aisles, but a lot of this stuff is showing how division has been sowed throughout 2020 and beyond, before 2020, but how we actually bring things together. So this is definitely be interesting. I'm glad Converge can be streaming that so that our audience can get informed.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, Colleen Echo Hawk, who was actually just on our show not too long ago, she's thrown her name in the hat for mayor of the city of Seattle, and we got a few more headlines. We'll be right back. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Back on this rap ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own, tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. My name is Omari Salisbury, and
I am Trey Holiday. Hey, y'all.
all right, so keep on going with these headlines here, Trey. Is it's funny because before I jump into it, I'm always used to like standing up and talking loud. I'm a loud talker, but I'm in my father's house. I mean, they're not here or anything, but it's like, I'm in my so some people might be actually turning it up. They're like, man, I was usually really loud, but it's a different situation here. But headline right here, just out this morning, Colleen Echo Hawk, executive director of the Chief Seattle Club, announces run for mayor of Seattle. Says Echo Hawk, who's been involved in the city's police reform efforts as a member of the CPC, we just talked about, and says she has never lost sight of historical suffering, joins a slim list of people interested in taking over for Mayor Jenny Durkin, who said she will not run. Echo Hawk said, I'm running for mayor of Seattle because I love the city, and we have a once-in-a-generation chance to rethink how it works and who it works for, Echo Hawk said on her website. If we take a people-first approach to renew, then we can become a transformative as our community demands us to be. One more thing here. The highest death rate for COVID were going to be in BIPOC communities, she said, referring to Black, Indigenous, and people of color. I was thinking about the language speakers, the elders at the Chief Seattle Club. What if we lose them? A whole piece of culture in our community. So, Colleen Echo Hawk, who, people know her. She's never had public office, but she's definitely been out there, been active, been on our show a few times. Got a lot of different partnerships with different groups across different community sectors, and the API, Asian Pacific Islanders, and African American community. What are your thoughts, Colleen Echo Hawk, putting her hat in the race?
Yeah, this is interesting. And I think that we kind of called it knowing that this race was going to get interesting as people begin to announce their running for mayor. You're right. When you talk about Colleen definitely being known in community beyond the Indigenous community, but really in a strong leadership position, particularly in the Indigenous community. And, we talk about these Indigenous roots of Seattle all the time and how it runs so deep. So this is definitely interesting. It's going to be great to see how people begin to respond to community concern around a lot of issues that were brought up, not only over the protest movement, but also a lot of the organizations that have been doing work on the ground have a lot of stake in how the next term of mayor in Seattle is going to take root. And so I actually like that she said, she never lost sight of, the wreckage that really needs to happen here to be resolved. And we talk about the reconciliation of so much the nation is looking at now, truth and reconciliation as a measure. So, this is going to be very interesting. I'm excited to see how it all shapes up and how community responds.
You know, another thing is people are keeping an eye out to see what Lorena Gonzalez, Councilmember Gonzalez.
We can't hear you.
You can't hear me. Really? I'm not muted. Can you hear
Yeah,
me
you're
now?
not muted, but for some odd reason, we cannot hear you.
It sounds like it's time to go to commercial break.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Back on this rap ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
You know, see, I'm an old school radio guy. Old school radio guy. Any kind of issue, but go to break.
Right.
Go to break.
Thank you. That was on our end. Ms. Director Oya got it all fixed for us. Apparently the audience could hear you just fine. I just couldn't. So all good.
Me and the audience, we got ESP. They gonna hear it no matter what. But what I was saying though is that we'll see if Councilmember Gonzalez throws her hat in the race as well. For me, there's these big political issues, and it's going to be like a lot of, horse trading and backroom dealing and all this and that. But also, man, we got to keep in mind that the chief executive of the city of Seattle, 11,000 employees, 35 departments. I mean, this is a big organization to run. And so it's like, people, and I'm speaking in general, not on any one candidate. Maybe someone might excel on the political side of things, but are they good at running an actual organization and things like that? There's a lot of stuff that we don't talk about. I know that there's big issues that are out there, which are social justice issues, which are front for and center on Converge. But there's issues of like bridge maintenance that we talk about. The auditor said that cities should spend $34 million a year maintaining the bridges, but they only spend $6 million because they do deferred maintenance. How do you make something like bridge maintenance sexy to the taxpayers of the city of Seattle and things like that? So we'll see what happens. Well, I mean, and Colleen Echohawk, I'm calling Colleen Echohawk. We'd love to have you here on the Morning Update Show so you can tell our audience why you should be the next mayor of the city of Seattle.
Absolutely. And I think you're so right with regard to the things that are not really talked about a lot. But we know a bunch of folks in West Seattle are ready to hear about this bridge maintenance and putting it at the forefront of folks' minds because there's some issues over there and we definitely need to get bridges fixed.
Right on. All right, moving along here. This next one from the South Seattle Emerald. City and Union hold pop-up COVID-19 vaccination site for home health care workers. City of Seattle and union leaders representing home care workers, SEIU 775, held a pop-up vaccination site aimed at vaccinating about 400 workers against the coronavirus. The Seattle Fire Department paramedics, EMTs, and firefighters, remember Chief Scoggins came to talk to us about this, administered the vaccine while SEIU volunteers organized the lines. Says it's a critical group of workers to be vaccinated, officials said, because they can work at multiple sites with communities vulnerable to COVID-19, including older adults and those who have multiple chronic health issues. Home care workers also tend to be Black, people of color with limited English, lacking in health insurance, and easy to overlook for getting vaccinated. This was 400 out there at Rainier Beach.
This is warming my heart to hear these stories because, you're absolutely right. I mean, what that was speaking about there is that so many people sometimes get overlooked, and home health care workers are a major part of keeping our elderly population, keeping those that need to be at home, that, have disabilities or, in any kind of issues that make them have to be at home. But we know that so much of that is about elder care. And so when we think about, the importance of, elders being vaccinated right now and really having the care they need, it's important that their workers be vaccinated so that they can, disperse at these different sites. But I love that it's being uplifted in this way. Oh, definitely needed.
Right. Now, it's really good to see these different kind of partnerships. And then the other day, we saw with Virginia Mason and Amazon for 2,000 vaccinations as well. It's coming out, and it's really good. Like, these are frontline workers. People don't realize somebody's in a home care facility. And you remember here in the Seattle area, really where COVID really struck big in America was in a home care or elder care facility. So it's important that these guys are getting vaccinated. Big shout out to the city of Seattle, the firefighters, and SEIU. Next, going on here, this is the Seattle Medium. You can find us here at seattlemedium.com. Community groups join forces to launch the Seattle Community Safety Initiative. In an effort to help curb violence in the community, 4 organizations, Urban Family, Community Passageways Critical Incident Response Team, the Boys and Girls Club of King County, and the YMCA have joined forces to establish the Seattle Community Safe Initiative. According to Paul Patu from Urban Family, the coalition plans to intervene by connecting youth with programs, providing family support, and enhancing neighborhood safety to embrace young people and encourage others to be active and present in their community. There's 3 areas of focus in this program, which is youth programs, neighborhood safety, and family support. And the collaboration consists of 3 hubs: the Central District, housed in the Upper Room, a Church of God in Christ; the Southeast Hub, located at the Rainier Vista Boys and Girls Club; and the West Seattle Hub, located at the YMCA of West Seattle. Each hub is responsible for the support and interventions necessary to promote unity within the community and to help curb youth violence through relationships and provide positive alternatives to the direction that violence will take them. That was a lot to read, but well worth it. And the whole article is there on the Seattle Medium.
This is another measure and kind of area that so many in the streets, with protest movement really talked about, is how communities began to have their own response teams, so that we can begin to showcase and start to uplift some of that heavy load that police have been carrying for so long. And this is a needed initiative. I will also say that there's a lot of organizations and individuals that have come together to kind of form peace and safety teams. And so hopefully this initiative right here can incorporate and encompass some of the work that is already happening as well. I know Paul Patu was once a part of a peace and safety initiative that really was spawned out of Africatown. And it's great to know that those kind of same measures are happening in this larger scale. I'm really hoping for some real unity in that regard, because I think it's important that, those who have been working on the ground, I know the Peace and Safety Initiative was working on an application, like literally an app that would go on people's phones with regard to community response teams. So it would be great to begin to incorporate all of that work and all of that knowledge into this initiative so that it can actually spread throughout those 3 hubs. And let me just say, those 3 hubs are, so important when we think about what we always talk about. We saw it in the summer, this uptick in youth violence and, youth against youth violence, and how we can begin to disrupt that, because we understand the areas that really encompass a lot of that. We talk about the South Seattle area and just drive-by shootings that were happening that were not getting reported on. It is important that, these peace and safety teams are at those places. And so kudos to those guys. Again, just hoping for that unity, because there's a lot of great work being done in this regard.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree. I'm just glad to also seeing here that they're putting focus on engaging family and community members. I mean, those are the most impactful people that can be involved in the process of disrupting youth violence. You know, if when it gets to the police, violence has already occurred, and so you know, the community needs to be directly involved in this process. So big shout out to those guys, and we'll definitely be following that. And we got one more thing here, and then we have a video. This is January is National Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and we had a video for today, but we're gonna push the video to tomorrow. But this right here comes out of the South Seattle Emerald. Port of Seattle Human Trafficking Awareness Campaign results in higher volumes to National Human Trafficking Hotline. And basically what they're saying is that more people, they've been working out there throughout the port to get more information about how to be able to spot people who are being human trafficked. And so it's to raise awareness about their efforts. The Port of Seattle installed human trafficking awareness signs in various languages at the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport and Port of Seattle Parks and Fishermen's Terminal. It says poverty is the biggest exploiter of people, especially the marginalized population. Native, Hispanic, and Black descendants of slaves are most affected, as human trafficking survivor shared at a recent briefing. It's been reported that traffickers use violence, threats, deception, debt bondage, and other manipulative tactics to force people to engage in commercial sex or to provide labor or services against their will. It's estimated that human trafficking generates billions of dollars of profit per year, second only to drug trafficking as the most profitable form of transnational crime. So, you know, I mean, a lot of times people play it down. It's human trafficking. This is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and man, it's a real deal. So, I mean, big shout out to Port of Seattle out there and raising awareness. I see those signs out there in so many different languages, and even like Delta where I fly a lot. You know, they train 75,000 employees on how to spot people that are being trafficked, because a lot of times the person sitting right next to you is being trafficked. You have no idea.
Absolutely. And this is something that definitely needs to be highlighted. It's great to know that Delta is taking a firm measure in training their staff and employees to be able to spotlight it. It's also great to hear the various ways that folks are bringing awareness to human trafficking during this month, but beyond, because you're right. When you talk about the statistics there, you know, showcasing how it's such a large industry even still. And yet there are so many different measures, so many different investigative teams that are, you know, that's their specialty to focus on and target, you know, folks who are making such huge profits off of human trafficking. It's something that definitely needs to be talked about more. I'd love to dig in myself, and because I think there's a lot of great people that have been working on this on the ground. We talk about, you know, sex workers being a part of some of this work, and it's unfortunate because they're kind of two different things. Like if you have, you know, an adult who just is deciding, you know, this is what I'm going to do, versus someone who's being human trafficked and like being, held against their will. There's a lot of unfortunate factors that really go into this. So I'm glad that we're uplifting, and I'm glad that the Port of Seattle is really doing something to step in and take a lead on this.
Yeah, definitely. We're living and working overseas, you meet people and they tell you like, yeah, my boss has my passport. Somebody has one, you know, they take the passport, take everything. So I actually did a lot of training on human trafficking. Another very serious issue here, and something that we're going to be highlighting on Wednesday, is the issue of suicide. You know, it's a national issue, but definitely hits home here in King County, the city of Seattle, and in our community. And on Wednesday morning, during the morning update show, we're actually going to be going over an interview that I did with Alyssa Ward, who's with the King County Prosecutor's Office, and they have a division there which is called the Extreme Risk Protection Order. And their whole goal there is to reduce firearm injury, also, you know, relates to suicide, and lots of tidbits of information, and we're going to go through all of it on Wednesday. But here was a short clip right here where Alyssa kind of breaks down some of the numbers.
If you look at the numbers from the King County Department of Health, it could be easy to interpret those numbers looking at who are the folks that are dying by suicide. It could be easy to see that or to think that suicide is a white problem. The baseline numbers are a lot of white folks are dying by suicide, but if you actually adjust for the population, The folks that are actually at highest risk are Native American folks, then followed by white folks, and then looking at Black folks.
Yeah. And so, when it's disproportionate in our community and also in the Native community, and then 68% of all deaths by firearm in King County are suicides. So Wednesday, I know a lot of people watch every day, but Wednesday, a real special day for us here in the Morning Update Show. And then also Wednesday night, and we've got a clip we'll play a little later in the show, is when you went one-on-one with Ashley McGirt, MSW, and really talked about suicide in the Black community, depression in the Black community, and some of the stigmas around it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to note, when we hear these statistics, again, these numbers are felt by families, right? Of those who decide to end their lives in this way with suicide. I mean, there's people that are left behind. I loved being able to bring Ashley into the studio and have that
Trey,
in-depth discussion.
Can we let's do this? Let's switch it up. I think since we're on the topic, we're going to go ahead and play your clip right now with you and Ashley McGirt, and then we'll come back. We'll go to break, and then we'll go to Nikki Barron. But since we're on this, let's stay on it.
Suicides actually don't get talked about enough in the Black community, and so I really want to start off with your expertise with regard to suicide, your background, and why you're actually one of our experts in this regard.
Yeah, so my master's research was actually on African American suicide, and it's important to really acknowledge that suicide is the third leading cause of death for African American male youth, and we don't talk about it.
This is the part for me that I think is so imperative, and why I really wanted to be a part of this is because we, in families, a lot of the times, particularly in the Black community, there is really a shame almost that comes with it when a family member has chosen to end their own life. And I have this personal lived experience of it, but I really want to hear from you before I get into my personal story. I really want to hear from you with regard to how that plays out, particularly in the Black community, with regard to the shame that then is felt by those who are left over.
When it comes to the Black community, what I see is we don't want to acknowledge it. We don't want to say what it was that led that person to harm themselves or how they died. We'll say they passed or they went on. We don't actually say they completed suicide and that was the cause of their death. We keep it within our inner circle and we don't talk about it. We don't share our stories because there's so much guilt. And a lot of that is survivor's guilt, which guilt is really just a way that we grieve. So oftentimes when we're grieving, we have guilt about, I should have done this, I could have done this, I wish I would have done this, and I could have ultimately saved that person's life. But that's a false reality.
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, we hear Ashley there talking about the numbers, breaking it down in the Black community. And what we saw in the clip of your interview there, is that, when we talk about the Pacific Northwest in particular, I know there's many of folks that I know that have migrated here from the South, and they're like, how do y'all deal with these gray skies? People getting those lights that bring them, vitamin D and bring them brightness, because there really is an entire syndrome, kind of this sadness syndrome, based on just because we're up here in the Pacific Northwest and our sun is limited. So there's a lot of different factors that, folks, really feel up here that may make our numbers a little bit different than the rest of the nation.
Right. And I think that what people will find useful on Wednesday is, one, the options that the King County Prosecutor's Office, this extreme risk protection order, especially if you have a loved one who you feel might be suicidal or extremely depressed and they have a firearm, you can work with the prosecutor's office to basically get them restrained from the firearm. But these interviews are real interesting in giving perspective, one, from what government can do, and then also what therapy and what community can do. So that's Wednesday during the Morning Update Show, and then also at 7 p.m. We're going to go to break right now. When we come back, we got producer Nikki Barron with the coronavirus update. You're watching the Morning Update Show. welcome back to the Morning Update Show. My name is Omari Salisbury, joined by the ever-talented and wonderful Trayana Holiday, and our director behind the scenes, who you can't see, is Alia D'Alessandro. Alia, please bring in Nikki Barron. Hello.
Good morning. Good morning, Nikki.
I gotta step up my home studio. Nikki just comes in and, man, if you ain't on them black magic cameras at the studio, you're gonna take a L when Nikki Barron hops on the screen with you. What's up, Nikki? How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm glad it's a nice, dry, fairly sunny day here in Seattle. It really helps with the mood.
Good stuff.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. All right, so what's the numbers looking like?
Yeah, let's dive right in. So we had another 1,987 coronavirus cases reported in Washington state, bringing the total number of diagnoses to 300,198, including 4,114 deaths. We are currently sitting at 17,129 people that have been hospitalized in the state due to the virus, and we don't have an update on deaths or hospitalizations yet. They don't report during the weekend, so we'll have those numbers for you later today. We are currently at an 81% hospital ICU capacity and a 10% positivity rate. All of our regions are still in phase 1, and we are currently averaging 17,618 vaccines, with our goal being 45,000 vaccines. And then you'll see here in this bottom chart, I've put the last 90 days or so for you guys to take a look at, so you guys can kind of see the trends on how we are doing in the state as far as peaks and valleys in our numbers there. We actually are doing pretty good nationally. We have decreased by 21% in positive cases in the last 2 weeks, according to the New York Times. But we're definitely not out of the woods yet. We have just found the first strain of the UK virus here in Snohomish County. 2 people have come up positive with that. And the way they find that is they actually are trying to sequence as many of the positive tests as they can to see which variants are popping up. So we are now officially one of the states that has the more viral strain, which is about twice as viral. And in the UK, that it being twice as viral actually ended up making it about 30% more lethal because of the strain that it puts on the healthcare system. So we had some positives this weekend, but there was also some negatives here. And that's the coronavirus update for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like what it gives, it takes. Are you on tonight, 6:15?
Yeah, so tonight, originally my plan was to discuss our long hauler COVID symptoms. There are people, even here in Washington state, there's been a few stories about people who got COVID, early March last year and are still dealing with symptoms. But I think I'm going to switch that up and dive more into the variant and what that means for us.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll see you at 6:15. It's just 9:15 for me. But either way, we'll catch up later on today. Thank you, Nikki. So, what a day. We don't ever want to leave people in this affected state. And it's just, man, some of this news is just heavy when you talk about what's going on. Of course, we got this very heavy issue of suicide that we're discussing. There's human trafficking and some of everything else. Thought that I would go into the crate here and, our partnership with Vanish in Seattle. And Vanish in Seattle, people might not know, we've actually got a TV special that's coming out in March. And Community Voices Vanish in Seattle. We spotlight a bunch of businesses that are still there, still making it happen, and some everything else, or new businesses and community. But I thought that this would be a good way to end this show, is to put on the video here that Vanish in Seattle produced about the Central District and about Wanawari. It's about 6.5 minutes long, but it's well worth it. And we're gonna change the energy a little bit. You can't see Inye Wakoma without changing the energy. Here it is, Vanish in Seattle, the Central District.
You scratched my back and I scratched yours like I'm supposed to. When we first met, I told my friends, yeah, I knocked the loco. Up top, pretty thing, Seattle, what a pretty name. She hit me with that city game, looks fresher than the Northwest rain.
Right now, we are in my great aunt's home, which is to say, this is the home of my grandfather's sister. It's also the home that my grandparents owned together. My grandparents' generation was a part of the Great Migration, that era when African Americans were leaving the South and coming to northern cities and western states en masse, looking for a better opportunity and a better life, and to escape the violent oppression of the American South. I mean, the Central District was the only place in the city where Black folks could buy property. Because of that, that's where the Black community was, and that was where all of our, religious, social institutions, everything was centered here.
We grew up together. I found solace in your back blocks, alleyways and rap spots, bass heavy off of Alki with your skyline in the backdrop. Yeah, that's what we posed in front of. Now supposedly you pose and you...
I think there's ways that Black people naturally organize that is embodied. Like when I think about this house, I'm from Seattle, but my family's not. My grandfather moved from South Carolina to Chicago and bought a whole bunch of houses that family could live in and rent from, just like Inye's grandfather, right? And it was like this upwardly mobile 20th century thing that Black folks did, right? So it just feels like it's part of our DNA for us to rent the house and then make sure our family of Seattle can come in and have a space here.
I mean, the neighborhood has been changing for the past almost 30 years. Definitely the past decade, things have accelerated the gentrification of the neighborhood. The neighborhood's gone from being almost 80% Black to less than 10% Black. So that's a massive change in every aspect of our daily lives, the folks who lived in the Central District, throughout the 20th century. The community that we grew up in, that we were familiar with, that we helped to create, essentially doesn't exist, at least not in a concentrated geographic way.
We've been talking a lot about belonging and that everybody wants a place to belong, right? And so people knew that this was their neighborhood, they knew they belonged here, and that has been taken from them. When neighbors look at them and say, what are you doing here?
The biggest thing that folks are, attempting to sort of pinpoint are, how do we actually survive this? How do we survive it? And then how do we, come out on the other end in some way that feels whole?
As a Black artist in Seattle, it gets really lonely in terms of like trying to figure out where you can share ideas with other people that are like you and actually like push you and see exciting work. I'm really interested in it being a place where people can experiment with new materials and new ideas. And that's why it's really important to have the local, regional, and national artists conversation within the house, right? So when local artists are exhibited in the same space as national artists, they don't have to leave their city to be able to feel like they get to that level of their career.
We need imaginative responses, ways of imagining ourselves in the future, right, that have everything to do with us getting there on our own, in ways that make sense to us.
At times like these, see me for who my neighborhood elders made me. See me for the fire that I am, for the match, the kindling, and the blaze, but also see me for my ash in these trying times. The current state of affairs in our current political climate, in times like these, we have to remember, we will get through this. We always have. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Alchemy Coach, please make some noise.
I'm excited about the ideas of Black artists and how they permeate the world. I've been going to galleries since I was 18 years old and half the people don't look up at you and treat you like you shouldn't be there. And so I intentionally wanted to flip that experience and make people feel welcome because, like I said, I think artists are the philosophers of our time. And so for us to kind of think about these big ideas that we're all trying to solve in the world, artists are the ones that are going to be tackling those ideas in the ways that like reach us in our heart space. What does it mean to bring people in? What does it mean to use the art as a gathering space? And so I think the house deconstructs that completely. You feel welcome, you feel like it's your grandmother's house, which is what most people say when they come through the door. Wanawari is about making sure the culture of Black folks that was part of this neighborhood is not erased. Because people come back and then they feel like they're strangers in the neighborhood they grew up in, right? So how do you retain culture? And I think that you do that through art. You do that through dance and music and spoken word and visual art and new media. And then people know they belong here.
Decide on what makes you happy. Decide on what makes you full. Decide on maybe if I move you.
Dope, right?
So good. And honestly, I love seeing, people that I grew up with and love be prominent. And shout out to my girl, Cynthia Brothers at Vanishing Seattle. Shout out to the Wanawari team and my girl, Elishaba. Oh my gosh, grew up with both of them. And honestly, that's what community is about. So thank you, for uplifting all of our spirits and ending on the right note, my friend.
We had to change the energy a little bit. I can already tell this is gonna be one of them weeks, man.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, anything for you?
You know what? I got a busy day. I'm sure a lot of you do too. Monday, last Monday, I think in January. So make it a great one, y'all.
Oh, that fast.
I know.
Yeah, definitely make it a great one. 6:15 tonight, coronavirus update show, and then tomorrow we're back 11 a.m. Let me see how I can work this here.
I'm already standing. All you got me good, yeah.
All right. Well, now I'm standing. So until tomorrow at 11 a.m. Peace.
Lift every voice and sing, till earth in heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun.